Well, here we go again. So yeah, against my better judgment, I'm gonna kind of do a follow-up to the video I made a little while back talking about Channel Awesome, which you might find to be a slightly odd thing because, well, nobody's really talking about Channel Awesome anymore. In fact, it's probably a safe guess that there's a fair number of people out there who, if you're watching this video at all, you might have seen it gone up and thought, wait, has something else happened? Did they do something else stupid? I didn't think so. And no, they haven't done anything else dumb. But that's kind of the point. I want to talk about how the channel seems to have survived and weathered what's gone on, or at least to a degree. I think there is still some lasting impact to this, and possibly some more we'll see down the line, that it doesn't really seem to be getting talked about anymore because the bulk of the controversy has kind of passed. Well, I don't know if it's passed, but it doesn't seem to be building on itself anymore. The dominoes seem to have more or less stopped falling. So, quick recap. Channel Awesome, home of the Nostalgia Critic, got themselves into quite a bit of hot water when there was a 73-page document put out, basically compiling the negative experiences of a fairly large number of past and current contributors to the Channel Awesome website. So, in the wake of that, Channel Awesome put out two responses. The first response that they put out was a complete non-apology, using the phrase, "We regret that you felt that way," which obviously did not go over well. And then when they put out a second response, it was poorly put together. It was supposedly an attempt to pick apart some of the specific complaints. It only addressed a handful of the things in the document, and those it didn't even address well. And the fallout from that had been even worse. So nearly all of the contributors who were not direct Channel Awesome employees all left the site, because Channel Awesome has its own in-house production staff. You know, they have their own studio and their own stuff that they make. But what Channel Awesome had been as a site was an aggregate for a lot of similarly themed and toned review creators, and all of them except two left. The only two remaining being Guru Larry and the Cinema Snob. And they look like they're not ever gonna leave, from the look of things. In the case of the Cinema Snob, from what I understand, he has a very strong sense of loyalty to Channel Awesome and probably to the Walker Brothers, whereas Guru Larry just doesn't seem to really give a crap. I don't know a heck of a lot about, but things seem to have settled back to normal pace. In fact, if you were to look at the Channel Awesome YouTube page, you might just find yourself going, oh, did they take a hiatus for a little while? I can see there was a gap in uploads, but they're pretty much back to daily uploads again. And more importantly, clearly of stuff that is now newly produced. There was a little bit of time where, first of all, like nothing went up. And then just a normal episode of Nostalgia Critic went up, and that was something that was very obviously filmed in advance. So it wasn't clear for a little while if they were just burning off whatever they had already finished making, and then it was hard to know what was going to happen. But new stuff started going up that very obviously had been made recently. Doug and Rob put up their sibling rivalry review of Infinity War. There was more Tamara's Never Seen, and also Tamara Just Saw, and so on. All of which, none of which I've seen. I know that they're there because I've gone to Channel Awesome's main page. I have not resubscribed. I don't intend to. I'm not going to say I never will, but I don't feel like the issues were ever properly addressed, which honestly is probably why they're going to keep going and they're going to be more or less okay. Because what was interesting was, I think after that second response especially, which went down disastrously, there was a real expectation about, well, what are they going to do next to try and fix this? And there was even indication from, I think it was Malcolm Ray, who's one of their actors, that indicated that they were preparing or had shot and were working on editing a response video in addition to the response statement that they put out. That never materialized. And I think maybe what happened was that, I was going to say cooler heads prevailed. Maybe they just realized that there was no way to put out this fire actively. They didn't have the means to do so. And unless they were going to basically come crawling on hands and knees going, we're sorry, we're sorry, we're sorry, here's everything that we did wrong and here's how we're going to change. If they weren't going to do that, which clearly they weren't, for whatever reason, then the best thing they could do at that point would just be to shut up, which is what they did. And because at that point, their failure to put out a third response or a video response isn't going to win them back any of the support, subscribers, etc. that they lost. And they did lose quite a few. They took a decent hit, tens of thousands of subscribers gone. And it hasn't really started bouncing back yet. They've been sitting at 1,016,000 for a couple of weeks now with no real growth so far as I could tell. But they also haven't hemorrhaged any more subscribers. So they're not winning back anyone new, but they're not losing anyone else either. And that was probably the smartest thing that they could do. Because if they were either unwilling or unable to offer a mea culpa and possibly offer up a scapegoat, someone who they could specifically lay blame on, then probably the smartest thing that they could do was just to shut up and move forward and not address it anymore so as to keep whoever hadn't already left. And when I say that was the best thing to do, I'm not saying morally. Morally, it would have been nice to get to see an actual proper addressing, respectful at least, addressing of the issues that wasn't as dismissive and spiteful and ill-conceived as their initial one was. But from a business standpoint, certainly, just keeping their mouth shut, that was the smart move. So Channel Awesome lives, sort of. Because Channel Awesome really, at this point, is kind of two things. There's the YouTube channel, which I would say actually a fair amount of people are subscribed to and don't even realize that Channel Awesome is kind of, or was until recently, kind of its own thing, separate as its own entity, as a website. And then there is that website. There is the Channel Awesome website. Now, the Channel Awesome YouTube is going to be okay, and is currently okay. It's going to be fine. They, like I said, they haven't hemorrhaged more subscribers. They're not gaining more back, but they're not losing any. Their views seem to be decent. They've gotten back to their once a day output that they were at previously. So that all seems to be fine. So that's going to keep plugging forward. Channel Awesome, the website, is kind of a ghost town. Because there were a few, well, there were basically two primary reasons as far as users going to it, for the reasons for Channel Awesome to exist. One was for the active community, because they had a forum that allowed for communication between fans, communication with fans, with creators, with that real direct connection. That's gone. The forums are closed down and shut off. And then the other thing was, it was an aggregate of all this, like I said before, similarly themed and sort of similarly toned review content. So if you liked that sort of thing, this was basically a one-stop shop to find a whole bunch of people who did that kind of thing and who sometimes interacted with each other, crossed over between shows. So that was nifty, to have a one-stop shop for a certain type and style of humorously themed review of a wide variety of stuff. It doesn't really work as that anymore either, because like I said, they had dozens of contributing partners, and now they're all gone but two. So there's very little reason for anyone to go to the Channel Awesome website because there's only 3 guys on it, all 3 of whom have their own YouTube channels. So you might as well just subscribe to 3 channels and not even bother with this site. So Channel Awesome, the site, I'm not going to say it's dead yet, but for my money, and I say for my money, I'm not going to bet money on this, but I would think that within the next 6 months, one of 2 things happens. Either they start courting new contributing partners, hoping that things have died down enough that they can bring in people who either don't care about the controversy or figure the controversy has been quiet for long enough that they can safely get a bump from Channel Awesome and being associated with them won't be a detriment. So they'll either start trying to rebuild the contributor base, or the site will just die. And I'm not sure, when I say within 6 months, I'm not necessarily saying they'll just pull the plug and it'll be gone, but I think it'll become clear that if it's just continuing to basically be them notifying whenever there's an upload from the 3 contributors, from the 2 extra contributors in Channel Awesome itself that are left, that it's just going to be quietly left to die on the vine. And I think the one big X factor in this is it's not clear how much of Channel Awesome's revenue was generated through the website as opposed to the YouTube channel. Because obviously they get, stuff off the YouTube channel. They get, they have ads placed there. They've done, they've done sponsorships of certain videos and so forth. So they're getting revenue that way. But, even if you've got really good view and subscriber numbers, obviously way better than I do, YouTube as a source of income is really erratic. It, from day to day, month to month, it can go up and down. It's really hard to build a stable business off of YouTube alone because knowing what you're going to be bringing in month to month is really hard to track out. So what may end up causing some disruption for this channel in the long run is how much of their stability was owed to the primary website, through possibly ad space sold on the site, through merchandise sold through the shop on that site. I believe the shop is also currently closed down on there. So with that gone, the question becomes, does the YouTube revenue, is that enough to maintain the rather sizable resources that Channel Awesome brags? A studio, a guy dedicated to making costumes and props, 2 actors, including a SAG member, and whatever, and all their equipment. Is the YouTube channel enough to pay for all that? I don't know. It might be. It might not be, though. And I wouldn't be shocked if in the next few months to a year, certain things or features of some of the, I was going to say less popular, I'll just go with less viewed, because obviously, people like what they like. And I'm sure these things have their fans, but some of the lower viewed ends of the things that aren't made by, say, the walkers themselves might start leaving, might start not being on the YouTube channel anymore. Things like the Orbit Report or the top 5 lists. I figure Tamra will stick around with her stuff because they get double duty out of her, because she they employ her as an actress for when they do sketch stuff, and she also has her own stuff going on. Malcolm Ray is pretty central to their cast, but I wouldn't be surprised if they start trimming their employee roles in a few months, depending on how much of that sort of revenue stabilization came from the Channel Awesome website, which honestly right now I cannot imagine is doing much for them. I mean, I don't know what they pay for the domain and whatever bandwidth they need to run the thing, but I can't imagine. At best, they got to be running neutral at this point. So it's been an interesting thing, and as I said, people kind of dropped off talking about it because there wasn't a new staggering revelation. There wasn't a new dumb thing that they did. They put their heads down, and they kept quiet, and the world moved on. And like I said, I think the people that they've lost are gonna stay lost. Just because they wanted change. I mean, that was the hashtag, change the channel. Change didn't really happen. So why would they come back? But I think once the guys at Channel Awesome knew that they, again, either weren't able or weren't willing to placate the people who were upset, that they were better off not responding it because they were just taking off more people by doing that. So they gave up. They gave up on the people who they figured they're never going to get back and work on keeping whoever's left, which numerically, at least as far as their subscriber numbers on YouTube go, is the majority of people. Now, it may not be the majority of active people. Again, just using myself as a baseline, I have 15,000 subscribers, but there's a couple of hundred who are super active, who seem to really watch nearly everything I put out and who comment regularly. So I think it's still going to be a bit of a hit to them because they've probably lost some of their most active supporters, because those were probably the people who were hurt the most. And I think the one last thing I'll mention before I wrap it up, I saw somebody ask, why did this turn into such a big deal when Logan Paul didn't even really lose any subscribers with his whole mess? And I think the answer to that is, when the Logan Paul thing happened, that was an outrage that was primarily centered outside of his subscriber base, outside of his fan base. That made national news. The outrage was people who'd never even heard of this guy before going, wait, what? And that was where that's where most of the anger was coming from. His fans didn't seem to be the ones who were ticked off. They seemed a little bit off-put, confused, but then he put out his video, and whether or not you feel it was manufactured or genuine, it was an apology, which allowed for any fans who were questioning to go, oh well, he was sorry, and to just stay. With Channel Awesome, it was different because the people who were upset were the fans. With Logan Paul, the controversy and the real outrage was people who weren't watching him. With Channel Awesome, the anger came from people who loved this site, contributors to it, and then it upset the people who were the supporters. So the impact was greater in terms of subscriber loss. The controversy did last longer because the people they ticked off wasn't these outside forces who are like, Channel Awesome, what's that? What did they do? Oh, awful. No, they were people like, oh my God, Channel Awesome, but I love that site. And what happened? And they were the ones who were upset. So I think that's where the difference was. And I think that's why this one had this particular, I guess, YouTube channel controversy had a longer shelf life than these things usually do, because these things usually done in a week, 2 weeks top. This one went months, but it seems to be done now, and Channel Awesome seems to have survived for now, for the most part, at least as a YouTube entity. Like I said, the main site seems to be pretty much toast, so unless they can figure out something else to do with it, I can't imagine that that's really going to be much for them anymore. But I just kind of wanted to touch on this again because I just had some thoughts and was thinking, yeah, it seems like it's done and they probably did the smartest thing. At least, since they weren't going to do what everyone wanted them to do. So I suppose that'll wrap it up. My thoughts on Channel Awesome, and unless something else major happens, probably the last time I'll ever talk about it. So that's me. What are your thoughts on all this? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. If you like the show, you can support me on Patreon. You can also follow me on Twitter, and I do a podcast with my partner called Punch Like a Girl, and you can buy t-shirts. There's links for all this stuff down in the description. So until next time, this council is adjourned.